talk to this being on camera.
That's your which side is your best side?
I don't have one. Well, I began fishing actually in 1959. I was 11 years old, and I begged my dad to take me out fishing with him. He had a 46-foot halibut boat at the time, and he said, okay, I'll take you. And he said, but you're going to have to do something on the boat. He said, I think we'll put you to washing dishes. So I said, well, that was fine. I thought that would be a great thing at 11 years old. So I made my first trip with him, and I washed the dishes. And about halfway through the trip, my father said to me, he said, these dishes seem a little bit greasy on the bottom. He said, are you getting them clean? I said, well, no, I'm only washing the top. That's what you eat off, isn't it? So he made me rewash all the dishes again, but I learned how to be a real good dishwasher. Sometimes when you've done all of the Hardy Boy books and washed all the dishes and you start to get a little bit bored, you start to fiddle with things. And I made the mistake of putting a screwdriver in my dad's radio, which he was listening to the news and the music and whatnot, and it popped a breaker, and he came in into the wheelhouse and asked me what happened. And I told him, and I was only a little over 12 then. He said, well, I think it's time for you to get out on deck. So I went out on deck, put my oilskins on, and they put me to cutting bait and baiting gear, and I slowly learned what it meant to be a fisherman, which I then understood was a lot more than washing dishes. And my dad treated me just like anybody else. You're here to learn, and we're going to train you, and you might not like it every minute and every day, but this is how it's going to go. And by the time I was 15 years old, at the end of the season, the crew, and that's who determines how much each individual gets paid, the crew voted me a full man share, so I made full man share at the summer of 15 years old.
I went to the school when I was down in the lunchroom. They have a sign, they have fishermen and a bridge and workers, and yeah, I used to look at that sign and think, I'll probably be a fisherman here someday. I kind of knew that when I was a child, that I was always going to be a fisherman. Yeah, I had a little boat since I was just a little guy, maybe 8 years old. I had a boat, rowing, bad outboards, rowing again. Yeah, I broke in long lining though in 1962. I was 15, and I was kind of a big kid, and by the time 3 years had gone by, I was getting a full share. So that was good. I was able to do all the rounds. And I saved my money. I was good at managing money. And I bought my own boat. This is the same boat I still have, back in 1970. And so that's been working out. I've been fishing since '84 with my own boat, and we're still fishing. It just comes in a couple days.
The Polaris was built in 1913, just across the waterway here in Strand Shipyards. It was built from timbers, from Washington State. They used to have the logs right under the bridge there. There was a mill there. And its sister ship is the Bassi. When they built the boats together, they were both side by side on the ways over at Strand. And they took one big huge timber, and they'd cut the ribs and the stems and all that. And the Polaris got the inside pieces, and the Bassi got the outside pieces. So we're sister ships, except that the Bassi is about a foot wider, and that's the only real difference in the two boats. They're both were well built. I mean, she's come back for 100 years. She's been in some pretty nasty storms.
Yeah, this is kind of the interesting story, how my family got into fishing in the United States. At least the story told to me is true. You have to take it with a grain of salt. Was my aunt immigrated to the United States in the 1920s. She was the oldest of 7 siblings, and then guaranteed for her brothers, her younger brothers, as time went on. And the next brother was Chris Odegaard. And Chris got a job logging in, I think, in Silverdale, here in Washington, if I remember right. And he was running the steam donkey. It was at that time, and he guaranteed for John, his next younger brother, to come over, and he got John a job logging there as well. And John wasn't a logger, but they asked him if he could operate a horse. And he says, yeah, no problem. We had a farm in Norway, and I understand horses. They were doing horse logging, towing the logs with a horse. Well, anyways, I think it was the second day on the job, John managed to tumble the horse and the log over a cliff and killed the horse. And so he got fired, and he went up to his brother who was on the steam donkey. He says, Chris, you hear what happened? Chris says, yeah, I heard you killed that horse. John goes, yeah, dumbest horse I've ever seen. Didn't understand a word of Norwegian. He says, well, now I don't have a job. What do you think I should do? And Chris goes, well, there's a lot of Norwegians in Ballard. Why don't you, if I was you, I'd head on up to Ballard and see if I could get a job fishing. And so John did, and he got a job on the Grant with the present Jack Knutsen's father, who was old man Jack.
It was just a different era, and all these old-timers that you fished with back then chewed snus Copenhagen primarily. So this was a double-decker boat, and you had to watch when you walked below decks because they were always spitting this stuff out. It was, in fact, my dad said one trip they were making, they ran out of Copenhagen, and they broke the trip up because everybody got so cranky, they had to go in and get, this is unbelievable. I heard that they iced a guy down once because they didn't want it, he passed away on the vessel. So they wrapped him in, tarp and just put him in ice. But they didn't break the trip up for that, but when they ran out of Copenhagen, they did.
I remember they went to the eyed hooks. Before they had it was flat on the back. And the hooks were wound around onto the hand wound and then tarred. And apparently when the first hooks that came out, eagle claw, with a eye in them, the Norwegian says this wasn't going to work. But, they figured out it was less time and it saved their fingers from tarring all that gear.
Well, back in them days, it was pretty hard to get on a long liner. You didn't just go down and get a chance. It was, and the old guy that had the Aloha, his name was Sig Dahl, and him and my dad were friends. They used to fish on the schooner El Dorado back in the 40s, and they got to be good friends. And when Sig knew that I was Torge's son, they took me out for the first 3 trips. I didn't get anything. I got the crew gave me $20 a piece, I guess. Then after that, one of the guys got off, and I got a quarter share or something. It was hard to get on a boat in them days.
Did you pick livers then?
No,
right?
well, we had the liver cans on board, but we didn't.
Yeah, that's what I got the first couple of trips, the proceeds from the livers, which weren't worth very much money.
Yeah.
For a few years, we were picking all the halibut livers, and they were, for a short time, from what I understand, they were worth quite a bit of money. But I think synthetics came in, or some alternatives, and they got to the point where it wasn't even worth picking them anymore. But that was when I was a greenhorn, breaking in, that was what the greenhorn got, the proceeds from the livers, which didn't amount to very much.
Well, it usually took at least a season, sometimes more. You had to be able to do everything for them. Most squareheads would give you. I mean, you had to go all around. You had to go to the roller. You had to do everything. I mean, it's a little different than it is nowadays. Nowadays, a guy's on the boat for about 20 minutes. He wants 2 shares. I mean, it was different then. It was hard to.
Yeah.
The squareheads didn't give you anything. It took a while to break in.
He said it perfectly. The old Norwegians wouldn't give you any. You really had to be a full man going in the roller, dressing fish, baiting, going in the fish hole. And, they finally reluctantly would vote you to full share. I think I broke the record for partial share. I think I was a partial share for almost 2 years.
Somebody told me that this guy named Arnie Larson was looking for a partner. He was getting ready to retire. And at the time, a lot of these older halibut fishermen were getting out of the business. I was walking down the docks with my dad, and somebody told me that Arnie Larson, I found him. He had a boat called the Majestic. It's a schooner, built in 1918. And I saw him down there, and he was working on the back of the boat, and I said, yeah, Mr. Larson, I understand you're looking for a partner. And he started speaking Norwegian to me. I couldn't understand a word he said. I really couldn't. I mean, I kind of caught some of it. And I said, well, yeah, you know, I'm looking for a position, and you know, I've got the money. I'd like to buy part of a boat, and what do you say? And he said, you know, I still couldn't understand him. So we walked away, and I looked at my dad, and I said, I think we just bought a boat. I think I just bought a boat. He said, I'm not so sure, you know. But the next day, I went down and started working with this guy, and bought half his boat.
I hadn't been around Norwegians before, so it was, my partner was from Olsen, which is, or the Olsen area. He was from the island called Vigra, which produces a lot of really good fishermen. So I was really immersed in this Norwegian thing. And I got on that boat, and I remember we were out fishing, and I was pretty hungry, and we came down for the evening meal, and all those squareheads are sitting there eating codfish heads. I thought there was a trick. They're going to get the greenhorn. They're going to get this half-breed to eat this food. And I was too clever for that. I'm not going to eat it. So I looked around, and they're all eating that codfish heads and boiled potatoes. And of course, I fished with them long enough that sooner or later I developed a taste for codfish heads.
Well, one time we were fishing out in Petrel Bank with the Carol M, and the boat was virtually loaded. And I was probably running a little too fast up to the next set. We were running the trough, and all of a sudden, you know, we just took one of these rollers, and the whole boat, you know, fish were washing off. The back end of the boat started going under. My brother and one of the other guys, oh God, they were going to pop the life raft. And I said, oh, God, wait a minute. I ran back there, looked out the galley window, and so I just took her slowly around back up into the sea, and she cleared herself. But, you know, we lost the fish that were on the deck, but the boat survived it. We didn't take any more fish. We shook everything else. So I learned a lesson in that respect. So yeah, I've been at, you know, several times that you just say, boy, if this weather keeps getting worse, you know, these boats are only so big. I think everybody has a respect for the sea. You know, you really gain a tremendous respect for the wind, you know, the seas, the icing conditions, all those things that, because you know, it's anything can happen out there.